Hi folks, my name is Girish, the host for Back to Basics, another Back to Basics for another week. Today we are going to talk about VR, AR, and XR, and we're going to talk about how the world kind of changes around the world today, nowadays. People are saying metaverse madness, but we're actually saying that VR was here a long time ago. But how it's used in today's world, that's what we're going to go and talk about, and how innovative way we are using it in a good way, not in a bad way. And we're going to talk to you about a person that I've talked to for several weeks now, and it seems like this person, this guest of mine, his name is Eric. Eric and I, we have the same wavelength when it comes to metaverse, when it comes to VR, when it comes to AR, and the medical field. So Eric, how are you? And thanks for coming to Back to Basics.
Thank you so much. This is fun. This is an honor. I appreciate it. I'm doing well, and I'm excited to dive into this topic and to have a chat.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you again, Eric. So before we get into the details of the VR and the XR and everything else for the medical side of things, what does back to basic mean to you?
Back to basic to me, it means tearing away all of the external aspects, all of the things that we think we need in order to go forward, and going back to the core basics of what we need as community, as individuals, to come together to figure out our new path forward. And so, to me, from the simulation side, where I come from, it's taking the toddler approach. It is going back and exploring the world through all of our senses.
Hmm.
So without going into great detail, that's my general understanding and definition of back to basics.
Of course, of course. Thank you again, Eric, for being on the show, and thank you for explaining what does back to basic mean to you. So thank you again. You know, let's take a little step back. We have a, let's say, an X-ray, and we have a photo, right? And which is a 2D dimensional. And now we're taking that and extracting that into a 3D, a 4D, or even a 5D, depending on how you want to think about this, right? So
Right.
how does that whole image changed over the years? I mean, we're living in a world now that we're living what 3D world versus a 2D world that where I used to live at. I don't know about you, but it's a very different world. What are your thoughts on this?
So my thoughts are going from 2D to 3D and beyond is giving us the ability to train better. It's giving us the ability to, let's say, look at that X-ray, and instead of having to ask ourselves, is this a shadow or is this a legit um, uh, anatomy aspect that I'm looking at? Now we can kind of merge and rotate, and we can see the entire image that we're looking at.
Hmm.
So we have a more precise, a clear understanding of what we're looking at, and that's just within the X-ray.
Hmm.
This goes beyond. This goes into our training now.
Hmm.
We can dive into aspects that will create memories for us that instead of memorizing or going through didactics later on in the field while we're taking care of a patient, we can actually have a memory while we were immersed in VR of a case, of a situation, and then we can recognize it, treat it, and save lives.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you again, by the way. You know,
Yeah,
if you don't mind, I want to read something, if that's okay with you.
yeah,
Okay,
absolutely.
so there's something here which is called 5D dimension, which is the 3D and the 4D and the 5D. Apparently, 5D was created back in 2013. So, which means that we are thinking in a different way of how to come up with a data memory and a crystal clear um, stability how we are getting into medical now. So it seems like it's already been there for many years. And I think what's happening is I think now we're in the educated phase when it comes to not 5D, but I think any of the verses nowadays that we're thinking at. So what are your thoughts on this? That it's been there for years, but I think we're learning today.
Yeah, excellent question. And I think this just goes with our cultural humanity as a whole. I think that when you look at the law of diffusion of innovation, we always have a small group of people who are the innovators, the early adopters. But most of the people want to see other people using things before they actually use it. So yes, this came out, and when it came out, I'm sure the people who created this had ideas and visions of what this was going to be. But selling that to someone and organizations and corporations to grab a hold of for utilization in that time without seeing it used is very difficult. And I think, just like you and I mentioned, web conference has been around for a really long time, but the pandemic hit, and all of a sudden now it was a viable tool. Well, it's been there. It's just a better use case now. And I think we're starting to see better use cases. I think we're starting to see that we can get things done on a virtual platform, and we can actually get it done a little bit more effective and more efficiently, therefore increasing productivity, increasing education, and retaining that information, and so on and so forth. So I think it's just another example of the way that businesses and our continued community growth has been for ever since I can remember.
Yeah, yeah. So thank you again, by the way. So this AR and VR, I guess it's called the augmented reality, and the VR is the virtual reality. And so XR means what? Extended reality between meshed together into one?
Extended or mixed. So you can mix those realities. So augmented reality, the main difference, the way that I see this, the main difference between augmented and virtual is virtual, you are 100% fully immersed into a false reality. So it is 100% animated. Augmented reality is you are in your environment and you have a digital hologram, or you have a digital image that you can interact with. And so you can mix those two, or you can extend that to, like, for instance, throwing sensors onto an object. And then now that becomes an interactive, augmented or altered reality that you can now interact with instead of just a hologram or something that's false. You can touch this, if you will. And to me, that's the melding of virtual and augmented and real life all together. To me, that's what XR is.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you again, Eric, for that. So let me ask you this, right? I'm playing a VR game, with my son, and all of a sudden, within 15, 20 minutes later, I get a little headache, or is it just me? So now the question is that if I'm getting headache after 15, 20 minutes later on the VR game, what's going to happen in the VR technology world that we're going to get in? I mean, is it going to be more dangerous, or is it going to be safer? Or was it the beginning phase of what I was dealing with? What are your thoughts on that?
So, great question. And unfortunately, there's not a 100% right answer to this. But what I will say is I'm prone to motion sickness in cars, for example. And there's only been once, maybe twice, that I've had this similar sickness noted within VR, and that was on a roller coaster game. So after diving into this and figuring out the ins and outs, I've come to realize there's a couple of things that cause cyber sickness, is what it's termed. One is the refresh rate is not up to speed. So you're seeing a lag. So in reality, when we move, everything is updated in real time. So our eyes adapt to everything we see, and it is exactly when we see it, we have that feedback loop to our central nervous system that is telling us what we're seeing, where we're going, and we have that stabilization. When you're in VR and it's lagging the refresh, it is not updating as quickly as we are used to it. So therefore, we're processing it differently. So moving forward, like all technology is going to improve. The quality, the clarity is going to be way better. The refresh rate is going to be through the roof. It is going to feel more real, and the more real it feels, the less chance for cyber sickness.
Yeah. Thank you again, by the way. So let me ask you this here. Technology is already here. We know what zeros and ones are, which is the binary for technology, and we know it works. But I think the issue people are facing, or maybe not really facing, but people are understanding, is that it's going to be a lot of lag time and a lot of network issues, right? Because now let's talk about from the medical point of view. I'm sitting in, I don't know, somewhere around the world, and you're operating me from the West Coast, let's say, okay? Now, there's going to be a lag time between the distance that we're going to be in, okay? Because let's take a operation of let's say a heart, which is, let's say, a bomb, right? And you have a red wire or a blue wire. You will cut some wire instead of that exact wire that you wanted, right? So what are your thoughts on the lag time that we're going to face?
So definitely something that we need to keep in mind in terms of utilization of the technology that we have. And lag time is most certainly one of those things. Wi-Fi connections are spotty at times. They themselves are continuing to be improved. So I think we need to look at what is best use. So I'm a firm believer that if we have an idea and we're working on something and we have this, just like you said, just like the example that you just gave, it's there, it could work. But if the technology hasn't caught up to that yet, it's not time. So let's wait and let's utilize the technology for the sake of humanity instead of utilizing technology for the sake of utilizing technology. So I think the lag time will continue to diminish, just like the quality of the graphics will continue to improve. I think that is just us coming together as a tech community, putting our heads together and just building something better. And so that may not have answered your question, but I think the coming together of us as a community, building and just better and utilizing what we have for the best use cases for now.
Yeah, definitely. So thank you again for that. Let me give you an example of let's say a brain, right? And you have the left side of the brain that you need to operate on for whatever reason. I'm not a doctor, but I'll say whatever reason, right? And we need to get to that certain section of that brain, right? So obviously people can't see because, I have a camera right here, but if anyone is watching on YouTube, what I'm doing is I want to get to the left side of the brain, right? On the left side of the brain, there's a certain particle that I need operated on. So I think what VR is doing is taking a piece out of that and then zoom it in to see what we can see. Is that how you think, or is that something different?
No, I think that is one aspect of
Okay.
it. Yes, most certainly.
Okay.
Yes.
So is that the new world that we're going to be living in, of zooming in and how see that? I mean, what is your educated guess on this so far?
So I think that is one future application of it. I think that is one use that we will be seeing, and that will start with the education part, because the education, in relation to the example that you're giving, is safe. It's safe to educate through this as opposed to operating on this same part of a body, especially when you throw in miles and hundreds of miles of geography in the way, increasing that lag time. So from the education standpoint, absolutely, grabbing that, expanding, it's a lot more user-friendly, it's a lot more impactful than looking at this in a textbook. When just like riding a bike, you don't learn to ride a bike by watching someone ride a bike or reading about riding a bike. You learn to ride a bike by jumping on the bike. Same thing. We learn better through application. So that's one of the reasons why the medical field is called a practice, because it's a continual practice until we as clinicians develop our gifts, develop our understanding, and you only do that through exposing yourself. So if we can expose earlier through VR and interact, VR, AR, and interact with these objects, with these symptoms, with these scenarios, then we're setting ourselves up for better, quicker practice, quicker study once we're in the field.
Yeah, thank you again, by the way, Eric. So can we explain to people that who are you and what do you do and why did I bring you in here with all these VR questions and XR questions? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So, as you mentioned, I'm Eric, and so I have just under 18 years of nursing experience, primarily in the pediatric emergency realm. Towards the end of my hospital career, I pivoted and went into the healthcare innovation simulation field and fell in love with the world of possibility. And what I mean by that is I was introduced to design thinking. And it was one of the first times in my professional career that someone asked me, why do I think something is the way it is? And how can it be better? And the journey towards that was to focus on empathy. So to see the world through someone else's eyes, but not only see the world, but to feel it through, because we all have those predisposed ideas that have developed over our own experiences. And so how are they seeing the world? But then also failing as quickly as we can in order to see how we progress. And so from that, I was introduced to healthcare simulation with mannequins. And that's when I referred earlier to the Toddler Approach, that's where this all came together and clicked, because we never stop learning through our senses. We just culturally stop for some reason. But we still learn better by putting our hands on something, by seeing how it works, by moving it, by listening to it, tasting or smelling if that's applicable. And so I thought, how do you scale healthcare simulation? And how do you make a bigger impact with this? And that's when VR was introduced to me. And so I've been working in healthcare VR for almost a year now, and but have been crazy excited about where it's going. So there's been a lot of research. There's been a lot of looking into case studies and how we can apply this and next steps. And it's one of the fastest growing aspects within healthcare, in my opinion.
Of course. Yeah, thank you again, by the way.
Yeah.
So this XR, do you think that we are improving ourselves to understand what treatments we need to give to patients and better in a better way to surgically do better than what we used to, instead of saying hit and trial type of thing? What are your thoughts on that?
Yes, I think so. And like all things, this isn't a one size fit all, and this isn't you're going to take this and it's going to replace everything that you're doing. What this is going to do is going to enhance everything that you're doing. So and it's different for the physicians and the nurses. And that's the beauty of this, is you can split these or you can bring them together. So you can have interprofessional education, so an IPE of a physician and nursing coming together in a virtual space, and I could be on the East Coast and the doc could be on the West Coast, and we could be joining in a virtual room practicing how we speak to one another. It can be as simple as that, or it can be as profound as surgically, doing difficult surgery. So conjoined twins that have really high risk. Well, you can build the digital data behind that, and you can practice in a safe environment to where when game time comes on, you're solid and you're going to actually play the way you practice, because we all want to practice like we play. And how we gauge that is how we're playing. So this improves and increases our ability to play, so to speak, the way that we want to.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you again. By the way, a disadvantage to this, which I see, is that we're gonna have a lag time of network, a lag time of data, and obviously the lag time of power. Right? Eventually they're gonna run out, or eventually we're gonna piggy bank to the other resources. So, what are your thoughts on that? Let's say during surgery, trying the power goes out, or during the surgery, the data goes out, or something will happen. So,
Right.
so is there a hypothetical case that we are getting into of a disaster recovery, as they say in the technology world?
Well, one of the beauties of working in healthcare is you work in a hospital long enough, you learn that if you have a plan B in all cases,
Hmm.
then you're solid. And one of the largest plan Bs in healthcare is power outages. So we actually run simulations house wide on power outages. What do you do from that?
Hmm.
And so even though there's a couple of second lag time, there should always be a generator to back up.
Hmm.
So if you're prepared for the worst, then you're going to excel in everything that you do, because that means that you have taken the time to go through the process.
Hmm.
So you're not so much worried about the outcome that we're talking about, because you know that your process is going to create that better outcome, or at least the outcome that is needed. And so it's kind of shifting focus on outcome to building just solid processes. And to me, that goes back to what type of company are you running, and how solid are your processes, your people, and your practices.
Hmm.
So I think if that's set, because just like you said, it's going to happen. It's not if it's going to happen, it's just a matter of when.
Hmm.
And hopefully it's not at that key moment,
Hmm.
but it could be.
Hmm.
So how do we tie this into and make sure that, I don't know, for a generator will come in and back up, and then for network, I'm really not sure. What is the plan B to say, okay, if we can't do this, do we have a surgeon there? If we're doing this across geography, do we have a surgeon there who can then pick up the scalpel, so to speak, and continue in the absence of the network?
Of course, yeah. I didn't expect you to know the network side of things, but I'm pretty sure
Yeah,
you know the other side of things, which is totally
right.
fine. So thank you again for that.
Yeah.
Now, do you think the XR and the VR stuff that we're getting into, do you think it's improving the well-beings of the people nowadays? Do you think it's helping us in any way?
I think it's about to. I think it's just at that pivotal moment to where it is about to. We still have, I mentioned the diffusion of innovation earlier. We're still at that aspect to where we haven't quite crossed yet. So we haven't fully adopted this, and just like computers are great tools for us to use, and we know. I mean, almost everyone has a computer now and uses it as tools to live daily. Well, when they first came out, they weren't tools. They were just something to have, and no one knew how
That's
to
right.
use them. They had ideas. We had these visionaries like Steve Jobs that said, "Hey, we're gonna give people the ability to, um, combat status quo and combat large corporations with just a computer." But no one could see that until they started using it and building it. And I think that's where we are right now. People are starting, prices have come down. And so it's getting into the hands of more people. And the more people who start utilizing this, the more ideas that are going to start pouring out, and the more use cases, the more utilization. And I think that is where we're at. We're at that point to where we're saying, okay, it's good for X, Y, and Z. What else can we use this for? Or better yet, how can we enhance X, Y, Z that we're working on right now?
Yeah, yeah. Thank you again, by the way. Now, we have talked so much about this XR and VR and everything else. What do you think we're going to see for the next 5 years? Because I think we've already been working since 2013 according to the virtual reality.
Right.
What do you think we're heading to? Do you think we're heading to a smell? Because now I think we're in that phase right now that we're gonna have a sense of smell and have a sense of touch. What are your thoughts on these?
It's interesting that you bring that up because uh, the thought and the idea of us learning through our senses fascinates me because in healthcare simulation, for example, we have mannequins. Those mannequins are high fidelity. They are amazing pieces of technology, but they have limitations. So I can touch them, I can hear them, and I can see them. But what I see doesn't correlate with a patient deteriorating in front of me. I can't do that with a mannequin. I have to use my imagination. So there has to be a really good facilitator leading the way, filling my imagination with, hey, this is how the story is going. Well, on the other side, for virtual reality, I can see a progression of a patient. So we can make that and it looks super real, but I can't touch it. And I think that is what is limiting in VR. And I think that is the next step in the short term is haptics. So I think we're going to be able to interact a little more with the objects in our virtual space, mainly with like haptic gloves. There's a couple out there that are super fascinating that I'm excited to try out. But now this takes our realism to the next level because now we think we can touch it. And if our subconscious mind thinks that we're touching something, then we're touching something in terms of memory and network forming for education. So I think that's next in the short term. In the long term, I think we are going to combine these two. I think we are going to combine objects with the sensors, like I mentioned earlier, and putting digital overlays. And now we can throw in this XR. And now we can see changes. We can see progressions, and we can put our hands on it to fix it. So, and that it's almost like our mannequins become our control. They become our objects. They become everything within. And we're looking around and we're still in our own environment. So back to what you said about the cyber sickness earlier, that decreases the cyber sickness dramatically because you're seeing your own reality in real time, as well as these little digital overlays of intricate aspects in our learning.
Yeah. So thank you again, by the way. So basically, obviously on a joking term, I don't need to shower and I don't need to put deodorant because the smell is not there yet. Am I right? Is that what they were saying?
Correct.
But later on, I guess the smell is gonna be there. So I guess we have to dress up eventually.
Right. Eventually, yeah. But right now, I think we're safe.
We're safe. Okay. So Eric, thank you again for being on the show. Any last words or anything for Back to Basics and my listeners that we have here?
Oh, just a huge thank you for this opportunity. This was a blast, and I know like with all technology, it has the potential to offer harm. But if we come together as a community, as people seeking to improve this world, it has unlimited opportunity to be something amazing. And I think that is what excites me the most is we have an idea of what's to come, but we don't quite know. And that gets me and the rest of our community excited. And I appreciate it, again, the opportunity. And thank you.
Eric, thank you again. When I contacted you, it was great. I was like a little kid in the toy store trying to understand this whole logic of this whole technology that we're living in. And we're getting into the new phase of our lives. And it seems like the new generations are going to be enjoying this as much as we are from the Gen X's and the baby boomers. So thank you again, Eric, for being here, and thank you again for supporting my podcast. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
So guys, we spoke with Eric today, and we talked about the basics of XR and VR and everything else that we're living in, and how medical has changed over the years. Now, we went from 2-dimension and we talked about the 5-dimension and how it's changing over the years. Now, as usual, as always, there's a quote of the day, and hopefully Eric will like this quote of the day. And the quote of the day is, let me just bring it up, because you know what? We're living in a world that we're just not really organized as of yet. But we are getting there eventually. And I should have actually taken care of this earlier, so I do apologize. The quote of the day is, virtual reality is a technology that could actually allow you to connect on a real human level, soul to soul, regardless of where you are in the world. Now, I think we are getting there. We talked about the senses that we have already used, but what about the other senses? Now, there's one thing that we have not touched about, which is the feeling and the attraction between the two people. We'll get into another episode on that whenever we get, and Eric might help me with that with someone else, I'm pretty sure. So guys, as usual, what do I always say at the end of the episode? Everything in life goes back to basics, and that's what we did today, guys. Guys, take care, God bless, and comment as much as you can on all my podcasts, good, bad, or ugly. Either way, it will make my show stronger day by day and week by week. Because you know what? This show is for you guys. And if you guys are enjoying it, I'm enjoying it. And there's 3 things that we enjoy in these episodes. The content is amazing. The guests are awesome. And third of all, host is the best. Guys, take care, God bless, and I'll see you next week. Next week's episode on Back to Basics.
Versus $90 a visit in our, general practitioner or family physician's office is very lucrative. And what you probably, and your audience, now that we're thinking about this, will notice is urgent cares in the beginning were, let's say a privately owned, like a Care Spot or you can name any of these little companies, right, that sort of popped up to fill this niche. But now what you're seeing more of, I'm going to guess with a lot of confidence, is as you drive along that corridor in your hometown, it's a hospital-owned urgent care, right? Because they recognize that this is where the money is, right? So the proliferation of urgent cares have now not only displaced the inappropriate ER utilization, but they add the unintended consequence of also replacing that very valuable primary care relationship, right? If it's easier for me and cheaper for me to just